In this video, we're going to be exploring how to use the selection tools. You have two files. One is a diary start file. The other is a diary end file, which you should have downloaded from your Dropbox. What I'd like you to do at this point is view both images on the screen at the same time. Let us go over to Window, let us go to Arrange, and since there are two files, let us click on Two Up Vertical. Notice that the image on the right is the completed file. The image on the left is on the one we're going to use. What we want to do is we want to give ourselves more room to see our full file. Let's grab right in the middle and move it over. Now I get my entire image here. And if you want to see the entire image here, you might have to scale it down some. To do that, I'm going to grab the zoom tool here on the left. I'm going to put it on subtract, minus, and I'm going to just make it a little bit smaller so I can see the entire thing. Now I'm going to be I also put my zoom tool back on plus. Now I'm going to be working on this image on the right. If you notice, we want to put the 5 up in this corner. We want to take this little earth here and we want to put it across the left. We're going to be duplicating. It looks like we're going to be inverting the color. We're going to select this flower, drop it here. We're going to pick up this pen, place it here, and also rotate it as we do that. And we're going to be combining this oval, placing it on top, and this lock is going to go on top of the oval. So since we're going to place one thing on top of another, let us begin there. Let me say this. Since the invention of the Quick Select tool, this whole project could be done almost exclusively with the Quick Select tool, but not really. If you were to try to do it over this black area, it's going to, and you try to, it'll just kind of go into the gray because the color pixels are too similar. So here we're going to use something like the Elliptical Marquee tool. I'm going to zoom in so you can see it. I hit the zoom tool and I zoom in and I can scroll over and now I have it in a nice center area. I'm going to take the Elliptical Marquee tool, and you know, when you make a selection, you go from one corner to the other. It's a little bit hard to make the selection that way. I get close, but it's not that easy. Another option is using the same tool. When you put your mouse in the center of the object, instead of pulling from the corner like that, if I were to hit the Option key, it makes the selection from the center. So I put it in where I believe the center is, I hit the Option key and I pull. That makes it a little bit easier to find the whole image. And here I'm not exactly right, but I'm close enough that I can kind of gauge the scale and move it over. Once you make a good selection, I'm going to go to full screen, Command 0. I'm going to pick up the Move tool. To move a selection, you pick up the Move tool and you can place it there. Now, I'm going to hit Command Z, go back one. Remember, that's if I want to just cut it out of the space like that. If I want to not take it from there and just duplicate it, I hit the Option key. Notice how the mouse goes from a pair of scissors to a black and white arrowhead, which allows me to duplicate things. For this lesson, you could cut it over to either one, but I want you to know the difference. So I place it where I want. If I deselect, it's going to stay in that spot and I won't be able to move it again unless I put it on a separate layer. For this project, we're not doing that, so I'm going to hit deselect. What goes on top of that should be that lock there. So we're going to zoom into this area so we can address the lock. Again, I told you there are different tools. If I were to use the Quick Select tool, I probably could select most of this pretty quick. As you see, and this tool becomes really invaluable. And now the key with Quick Select is to make sure that your brush isn't too big, because whatever the brush touches, it's going to affect. It's also very good at correcting itself if you're doing subtractions. So you can see here, I've got a very good selection done very quickly. I'm going to deselect it for a moment and share with you that when a couple of versions back on Photoshop, that didn't exist. So we'd be doing that with something like a magnetic lasso tool, and it may become necessary in the future. So I want to show you how it works. It's attracted to pixels, and it would work nicely here because there's a strong dark edge up against the neutral gray. So I'm going to show you how I could, back in the day when we were just tracing edges, before we had all these wonderful tools, we would go around the edge. Now, I don't expect you to do this. I really don't, because why would I do something harder when I have something easier? But I want to know that I taught it, that you have the possibility to use it. So when I get to the end, I double click, and I have a very, very nice selection. And for me, I'm going to use this one. You can use any one you want. I'm going to take it, I'm going to pick it up, and I'm going to place it right in that location, and I'm going to hit deselect. The next thing that I want to do is grab this flower. Again, a long time ago, we would work very hard to trace around edges, but you can use, some smart ideas. One, you could use quick select, which is nice, and it works fast because it has a white border, very easy to determine. But there were times where I would use either the rectangular or the elliptical marquee, and I would make a selection. Then I would use the selection tool, hitting the option key and subtract the white area. And still today, that technique is useful. So I share it with you. You can select it in either manner, but I would suggest you learn how to use the subtraction method. Let me repeat that. You take a rectangular marquee tool or an elliptical marquee tool. You have a big broad area. Take a magic wand tool, and you use the option key to minus, and you subtract the white area, leaving you with just the flower. I'm going to use the move tool, and I'm going to put it in place here. More or less where I see in this picture. I'm going to hit deselect. Now I want to grab the pen tool. I zoom in, you'll notice every time I have to go to a different area, it's just easier to see. Now what I want to do is, again, that quick select tool is really wonderful. It lets you kind of grab everything. Again, I recommend keeping that brush small. If you have a big brush when you use it, it's going to be difficult. But I use a small brush, and see I went too far there, hit the option key, and it is very good at correcting itself here. So I can't complain about that. There it is, very close. The old days, I would recommend using the polygonal lasso tool to make this selection because it's a tough selection. But this will work effectively for you. So I would hit Command 0, I would take, pick it up. Now what we want to do is we want to rotate it. So we're going to go over to the Edit tool, and we're going to say Transform, Rotate, allowing us to rotate it, putting it in place. And when you're happy with your location, you can double click, allowing that to be in place. Now, let's move on. I'm going to deselect, Command D. Let's get that number 5 in place. In the past, when we would do that, we would use the magic wand tool because this would be a hue blue up against gray. Very easy to select with a magic wand tool, which is set at a tolerance of 32. That means 32 pixel variations. So we'll use that today. We'll click here, and you'll notice we don't get it all. We hit the shift key and a little plus appears. And now we start grabbing those little areas that are still flowing. And we can do that and make the selection until you get rid of all those little areas. The other thing you can do is you can take and you can use that quick select tool. I can't argue with it. And you can run through and quickly, as long as you're not touching the gray with your brush, make a quick selection. But you notice it grabbed this area. Use your option key and subtract it. We'll take it, grab the move tool, we'll pick it up, and we'll put it in place, maybe about there. You're going to hit deselect, and we have our selection in place. The next thing we need to do is go and grab this flower. So we're going to, this planet. So we're going to go over, grab the elliptical marquee tool again. That's where we started this time. We're going to go right in, and I'm going to zoom over. I'm going to zoom up, and we're going to try to select it. So remember, we put the elliptical marquee tool in the center, and then when we do that, we hit the Option key, we make a selection from the center. But it's the Earth. We want a perfect circle. So also hit the Shift key after you hit the Option key, and you will get a perfect circle. If you don't hit the Shift key, you'll easily get an oval. Hit the Shift key, perfect circle. And even if you're not in the exact right place, you can nudge it with the arrows. Have a good selection. I'm going to hit Command 0. I'm going to grab my Move tool. And I'm going to bring it up to the top and place it here. But you'll notice there are 3 in this picture. And they look different. So first, let's change them. First, we're going to go over to Image. And we're going to say Adjust. And that happens to be the opposite color. So we're going to hit Invert. And you notice it changes to look just like that one. Now we want to duplicate it. Still using the Move tool. If I hit the Option key, I get that double-headed arrow and I can duplicate it. While it's selected, I can change its scale. So I can say Edit, Transform Scale. I want to make it bigger, but I don't want it to become an oval. So I'm going to hit the Shift key. And I'm going to pull it out. And if I hit the Option key, it goes from the center and it kind of stays where it was. I want it a little bit bigger. If it's too big, you can make it smaller. Double click. Now I've got 2. I want to do the same thing I just did. So I'm going to hit the Option key. Now I get that double-headed arrow. I'm going to move it over. I'm going to go over to Edit. I'm going to say Transform Scale. And again, I'm going to hit the Shift key so I don't distort it, and the Option key so I keep it kind of central. Double click. Now the last step for this project is to take your crop tool. Oh, excuse me, didn't mean to crop that. Deselect first. Now I'm going to grab my crop tool. I'm going to bring my edges in. I'm going to bring my corners up. I'm going to double click. I have a finished product. I'm going to click off the crop tool. I'm going to go over, hit File, Save As. I'm going to make sure I name it appropriately. So look, right here, I'm going to put P2. My name is Bob. And it's the diary start file. I just at this point decide to hit save. Pay attention, I'm putting mine on the desktop. Save. And I've saved it with my name. And I hope you've enjoyed the lesson.